The trial captivating a nation.
Reed is accused of killing her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. The defense claims she was framed in a police cover-up.
On the scene to keep you informed at every turn.
In Dedham, Katie Benoit, NBC 10 News.
With live updates and legal analysis.
What happens then? Does the trial have to stop?
A lawyer's only as good as his or her word.
They failed miserably and they'll continue to fail.
On air, online, and on the app. NBC 10 News has the latest on the retrial of Karen Reed.
Hi, everybody. Once again, this is our daily debrief on the Karen Reed retrial. Joining me right off the bat is Peter Elikann. He's an attorney in private practice, defense attorney. He's been following this for us. He's one of the legal analysts we've been relying on. Peter, we're going to talk about a couple of crime lab technicians who took the stand today. It was a half a day of testimony, so it wasn't a lot of testimony today. But these are the two crime lab people who went over some of the evidence, including the plastic tail light alleged to have been broken by Karen Reed when she allegedly banged into John O'Keefe. Let me roll this quick clip with Ashley Valier, and she's going to tell us about the clear plastic found on the ground and then turned into her to analyze. Go ahead.
And what did you find contained within that debris from John O'Keefe's clothing?
So it was 5 different items. So it was debris collected from, labeled as coming from the clothing. There was mostly debris, some apparent fibers.
Were there any pieces of apparent plastic contained within the debris?
Yes.
Was there dirt contained within the debris?
Yes.
All right, Peter, does that necessarily mean it was taillight debris, taillight plastic? It could be anything.
Right, it is. And that's why this really doesn't settle anything. Also, a lot of the testimony today had to do with DNA, but they found on various pieces there were O'Keefe's DNA was on it, but so were a lot of other people. So that leaves us in kind of a confusing state. I mean, was there a struggle? Is this conclusive of anything? So it sometimes DNA will absolutely nail somebody on a case. And I'll just say, if this was another kind of, well, the thing is, O'Keefe was always, I mean, he was the boyfriend of the owner of the car. He was in and out of that car all the time. So the fact that a hair of his or DNA would be found on it wouldn't really be that conclusive of anything, as opposed to if this was a case where, let's say I struck a stranger on some country road and later on, I said, no, it wasn't me, it wasn't my car. And they said, wait a second, we found his DNA or his hair on your car. That would probably nail me cold and I'd be convicted. But this is not that conclusive either way.
All right, just talk specifically before we move on about where this DNA was found. Where was his DNA found that you just referenced there, some of it?
Well, they talked a lot about his clothing. His DNA was found on his jeans, but so were other people's, on his on shoes, on. They said there were some pieces of plastic from the tail light that they found that it wasn't really, they said it could likely be his, and they also found the DNA of other people too. And the defense kind of chipped away and they said, but what kind of, did you have chain of custody? Do you have any idea who was handling this, who was touching it? And a lot of the clothes were just lumped together in a bag, or I know at the hospital, they were all in one pile somewhere. So the defense tried to make as much as possible of that they could, that it just wasn't, that it was contaminated and just really is not as valuable. So there's something there for the defense and the prosecution on this evidence today.
Andre Porter was the second lab tech, talking specifically about testing the taillight pieces for DNA. Let's listen.
Now, with reference to the swab from the taillight, were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. And the DNA profile from this item is at least 510 non-alien times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
You found that there were 3 contributors of DNA to that taillight attached to the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
One of those contributors appeared to be John O'Keefe. Is that fair to say?
He was included into the profile.
With regard to the other two contributors, who were they?
They could be anybody.
All right, Peter, so they're specifically saying they found what they believe to be John O'Keefe's DNA on pieces of the taillight, but then they found other DNA from other people, other unnamed people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right, and they were criticized for that because at least the defense tried to make a big deal about that. They said, so did you compare it to the lead investigator's DNA or any of the other police DNA? Did you compare it to anybody's there who might have been handling it? And this expert just kind of said, well, no, we didn't do that. We just know it was somebody's. And so they tried to make as much as they could of that. I mean, it would certainly, having his DNA there, O'Keefe, would be helpful to the prosecution's case, but then it kind of gets lost in the soup here a little bit. So again, it's evidence for the prosecution, but then the defense has things to say about that.
Right. Yesterday, they had the medical examiner on, and wasn't it devastating for the state when she said there's no evidence that he was hit by a car? She saw no trauma from striking a car.
Right. I think that was a big day for the defense yesterday, that she wouldn't say the manner of death. She just said the cause. There's a blunt, blunt trauma to the back of the head. And so there were a bunch of things, though, that came out that were rather helpful to the defense. For example, one of the lawyers asked her, well, could that also, the fact that there wasn't just blunt trauma to the back of the head, but also lacerations in the front. And they said, well, would that be consistent or inconsistent with being punched? And she just said, well, it would be consistent, but she didn't want to go and she didn't also rule out that he was hit by a car and hit the back of his head either. So when a jury hears that, like, well, it could be the defense's theory that it was he got in the fight, or it could be he got hit by the car. The jury then just, if they don't really know, well, then it's like, well, the case wasn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So any confusion goes to the benefit of the defendant.
Just before we go and see what Karen Reed said on her way out today, in fact, she didn't say much. That Massachusetts crime lab has a history of problems. It was in the news, in and out of the news with technicians and all kinds of drug contamination. Is that fertile ground to ply?
Yeah, you try to go. I mean, they're trying to claim that we cleaned up our act a bit, but it was horrible. I mean, they literally were putting some of the analysts into prison because they were tampering with the evidence, and there was no kind of governing over it. There was no there were no fail-safe procedures or whatever. It was just a kind of a wild west where things were thrown all over the rooms, and you actually had analysts who were more than one who were just making up the stuff and fabricating it, and they proved that. So it has been a disaster in the past. They will try to claim that we've really cleaned up our act and put in better procedures and safeguards.
Well, the state will say that. The defense, I imagine, will say, well, how much have you cleaned up? Because the stuff came in solo cups, and I don't hear you screaming and yelling about the way it was collected. All right, let's listen to Karen Reed. I don't believe she said much on the way out, but we'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, we're coming close to the end. There'll be no comment from Karen today. Sorry.
Thank you, guys.
As we're coming close to the end, there'll be no comment from Karen today. NBC 10's Katie Benoit just is joining us a little late here today. Are we coming close to the end? What's the timetable here with regard to the state wrapping up its case, Katie?
So the prosecution told the judge today that they hope to get some of the witnesses still that they want to testify next week, but they also mentioned it's a possibility one of the crash reconstruction experts might testify the day after Memorial Day. So we're still looking at a full week next week. There's a couple days the jury won't be there Friday and a half day Thursday, but next week and then definitely at least one day after Memorial Day is the time for the prosecution case. It could be a little bit longer. So we're in that 4-week range right now, just finishing it up. So this trial was expected to go 6 to 8 weeks. So we're about halfway there, I guess, if it goes 8 weeks.
Peter, it's amazing. I'm following some of the bloggers and people covering this, and some of them are making a lot out of, well, she's not talking now, is she? She had a lot to say when this thing started, talking in and out of the courtroom. Should we make anything out of that? Or
not really. It's not that it's suddenly going bad against her and all of a sudden, oh, I'm scared now. It's really the evidence is coming just fine for the defense. again, this is rather untraditional. The customary practices that we criminal defense attorneys do not have our clients talk to the media because they could use it at a trial, or they can find you in, even if you're innocent, they can find you in some kind of inconsistency. You said something different once, or they can twist the words around. So I've never quite understood. She has such great lawyers that I kind of take it on faith that they must know what they're doing, because it really goes against conventional wisdom that you don't have your clients talk to the media while there's ongoing litigation like this.
Well, you think they'll recommend she take the stand or not take the stand?
I don't think there's any way in the world she will take the stand. I think it's almost a few things you can guarantee in this world, but that's close to it. I don't see how it can really help it. Because it's easy for her to testify, but then cross-examination, they could go on after her for days and days, and it's a wild card, and I don't think that they need it. All the defense needs to do is be able to say this case was not proved beyond a reasonable doubt. We haven't seen a smoking gun. We haven't seen anything that nails it. We see arguments on both sides that are rather strong. And again, like that old baseball phrase, tie goes to the runner. If the jury is kind of confused and not positive, there's battling experts and all that, and then they that's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and you're not supposed to find her guilty.
Well, you're one of 3 legal analysts we're relying on, and all 3 of you have now said the same thing, that she's not going to take the stand in your estimation. And I've counted to each one. Well, that always leaves a sour taste in the jury's mouth. But you're right. We're only arguing reasonable doubt, and all you need is one juror to feel reasonably doubtful. Yeah. Just one. All right. Peter, thanks for joining us. Katie, we've got the attorney's view on this. What are the reporters buzzing about out there? Do they think that she's going to take the stand? Does that come up in conversation out in the lunch break?
It has. When she comes out of the courthouse each day, that's a question that's been asked a couple of times, and she says it's to be determined. So it's unclear yet. But something that's really interesting this trial is those clips from the media that are being played. So even if she doesn't testify, the jury is hearing from her, which is kind of an interesting way to get some of her statements, things she has said outside of court, in court. So it's definitely interesting. So even if she doesn't testify, the jury is hearing from her in these videos. And these videos are played once a day, sometimes a couple times a week. So there's a lot of clips of things that she has to say.
All right, NBC 10's Katie Benoit, thanks. We'll look for your reporting later tonight, and I'll look for you on NBC 10 at 6. Thanks for joining us for now. And by the way, on the same WJAR YouTube page, you can watch gavel to gavel coverage. For now, I'm Gene Valicenti.
The trial captivating a nation.
The defense had questions about initial evidence collected in red Solo cups.
Solo cups and stuff put in bags.
You don't know where the DNA that's on those things is coming from.
What can we expect from Cross?
A lot.
The cross-examination has been described as aggressive.
I think they have to be very strong with the cross here because they're not allowed to bring in their own expert to talk about police procedures and policies.
NBC 10 News has the latest on the retrial of Karen Read.